And tithing really has nothing to do with money. It is not really a New Testament concept. It's exclusively an Old Testament concept. Absolutely. To be honest with you, the concept of tithing was not even introduced to the church until about the 5th century. They talked about it during the 4th century, but they thought that it was apparent completely to the New Testament gospel of Jesus Christ. So it was not introduced into the church until maybe around the 5th, 6th century. And the reason why is because church began to grow. It was big. It began to be big. So they needed a way, church leaders needed a way to fund all of this, especially, and we are talking about the Catholic Church. They needed a way to fund big church. In order to do that, they went back to the Old Testament and they figured, okay, we can use a concept like this one to be able to fund the church. But if you go back to the Old Testament, you will find out, even in the book of Deuteronomy, where tithing is really introduced as a law, you will find out that tithing had nothing to do with money. It has to do with the produce of the land. If you realize, if you start reading, you will find out that God even identified and enumerated the things that you should tithe from: the cattle, the fruit of the trees, grain, oil, drink offerings, so on and so forth. These were tithe items. But it wasn't money. To be honest with you, I would have to say that that's a cap out, because we know for a fact that they had money back then. How do we know this? Listen, we can go as far back as Abraham. Abraham bought a field for his wife and for his family, and he paid 400 pieces of silver for it. So he had money. If you remember, Joseph was sold into slavery for how much? 30 pieces of silver. They had money. They always had money. As a matter of fact, even in the instructions concerning tithing, the Bible tells us that if your tithe was supposed to be eaten at the temple. You bring your tithe to the temple. The problem was that so many people lived so far from the temple they could not actually bring 10% of everything they made in the fields. So the Lord came up with an idea for that. And the instructions were this: if what you have is too heavy for you, then all you have to do is sell it. When you sell it, you take the money, the silver or the gold that was money, you go to the place where God has shown you to eat your tithe, and there you can buy the stuff you need. So then now you go back to buy your tithe around the area in which it was supposed to be eaten, which is something else that you did not know, that your tithe was supposed to be eaten. Okay, again, you're absolutely right. If a man robbed God, and this whole nation said God has robbed me in what? In tithe and in offerings. But if tithe and offerings is now money, you are not robbing God from money. We have already established that it was not money. That's one thing. Right. The other thing is this. That is Malachi, I think it's about the 3rd chapter. If you go to the 1st chapter, you need to go to the 1st chapter and find out what brings God to the point of saying something like this. And in the 1st chapter, you find out that the priests were offering as sacrifices lame animals, blind animals, when you know that they were supposed to offer the best of the produce, without blemishes, without defects, and so on and so forth. But they were offering the stuff that they actually did not want. So when God says bring the whole tithe, it's not talking about the entire, but whole as in healthy. Absolutely. We are confusing tithing with giving. There are two different concepts. And the New Testament teaches giving, while the Old Testament teaches tithing. And tithing has to do with law. I think the best example of giving would have to be the widow that put the 2 pennies or the 2 mites in the offering box. That Jesus noticed her. He noticed how everybody was putting out of their abundance whatever was in excess, but she put all that she had. And again, the Bible did not call that tithing. And again, it was money.
Ah, okay.
There were coins, so that it was money, but it wasn't a tithe. So giving, which is a New Testament concept, has to do with the heart, has to do with what God has put in your heart to give in accordance to what you have and not in accordance to what you don't have. The problem is that we have decided that the church has to be rich. In order for the church to be rich, if you will, we have to now attach curses to people to motivate them to give. This is the reason why they take an Old Testament curse that talks about the devourer and you are cursed with a curse and so on and so forth, but that had to do with tithing, and they're coming and applying it to money because people are not necessarily motivated to give unless there is a stigma attached to it, or there is a possibility that I might be impoverished, or that my health may fail me, or some kind of consequence as a result. Now, whenever you attach giving to those things, then that means that your giving is under compulsion. And it is no longer a heartfelt, spirit-led action. And it does you no good to give under those kind of pretenses.
Is there a scripture that would support that kind of logic?
There is a scripture where God says that he loves a cheerful giver, and that whoever gives should not give under compulsion, but as he has proposed in his heart to give. Most of our pastors, and please, I'm not criticizing anybody in particular, but most of our pastors don't trust God enough for that. Do you understand the amount of faith that would be required for you to speak to your congregation and tell them that the law, the Old Testament binding law, is no longer in effect, and that we are living under grace, and so that your giving should be spirit motivated? Man, at the end of the month, there will be a whole lot of nervous pastors wondering if they're going to get paid or if the light bill is going to get paid. But my philosophy is, if this is of God, then your lack of giving cannot destroy it.
So,
if this is of God.
Wow. So this requires faith.
Absolutely. You see, God is going to sustain his church whether you participate or not. The question is, do you want to be a vehicle by which God supports his church, or do you want to be left out? That's the question. But that the church will go under because you don't give, and because I am so afraid that you won't give, I start making up stuff to make you so afraid and so fearful, then that means that all of your giving is with ill intent. You're trying to buy blessing.
Oh, wow.
Can God be manipulated like that?